The Vanishing Violinist. A Sherlock Holmes mystery in 4 parts in tribute to Arthur Conan Doyle. Part 1. The Impossible Disappearance. The rain drummed against the windows of 221 B. Baker Street with that peculiar persistence that only London can manage in late October. I sat by the fire attempting to lose myself in the latest medical journal, when my attention was drawn to the extraordinary spectacle of my old friend, Sherlock Holmes. He had positioned himself before our large window, violin in hand, but rather than playing, he was using the instrument as some sort of measuring device, holding it at various angles against the glass, while muttering calculations under his breath. "Holmes," I ventured, setting aside my journal, "might I inquire what geometric mysteries you are solving with your Stradivarius?" He turned, his grey eyes bright with that familiar gleam that preceded his most intriguing cases. "Ah, Watson, perfect timing. I have been contemplating the physics of sound projection in enclosed spaces. Tell me, if a violinist were to vanish completely from a locked room during a performance, leaving behind only the echo of an unfinished melody, what would your medical mind conclude?" "That I had been consuming too much brandy," I replied dryly. Holmes chuckled, but his expression remained serious. "I fear, old friend, that we may soon be called upon to investigate precisely such an impossibility. Mrs. Hudson mentioned this morning that she overheard 2 constables discussing a most peculiar incident at the Royal Opera House." As if summoned by his words, Mrs. Hudson appeared at our door, her usually composed face bearing traces of unusual excitement. "Mr. Holmes, there's a gentleman here to see you. Says it's most urgent and concerns the disappearance at Covent Garden. He's in quite a state, sir." "Show him up immediately, Mrs. Hudson." Our visitor proved to be a distinguished man in his 60s, impeccably dressed despite the obvious strain etched upon his features. His hands trembled slightly as he removed his silk hat, and I noted the characteristic calluses of a string musician upon his fingertips. "Mr. Holmes, Dr. Watson," he began without preamble, "I am Sir Reginald Blackwood, director of the Royal Opera House. What I am about to tell you will sound like the ravings of a madman, but I assure you that every word is true, witnessed by over 2,000 people." Holmes gestured to our best chair and settled himself opposite our guest, his fingers steepled in his characteristic pose of intense concentration. "Sir Reginald, pray tell us everything, omitting no detail, however insignificant it may seem." Sir Reginald drew a shuddering breath. 3 nights ago we hosted what was meant to be the musical event of the season, a solo performance by Madame Elena Vasquez, the renowned Spanish violinist. You may have read of her in the papers. She is considered one of the finest musicians of our generation. I nodded, recalling recent reviews praising the virtuoso's extraordinary talent. "I believe she was to perform the Brahms violin concerto?" "Precisely, Doctor. Watson, the performance began at 8 o'clock sharp. Madame Vasquez took the stage to thunderous applause, looking magnificent in a crimson evening gown. She was accompanied by our full orchestra under the baton of Maestro Friedrich Zimmermann. The first movement proceeded flawlessly. Her interpretation was sublime, transcendent even." Sir Reginald paused, running his hands through his silver hair. "It was during the opening bars of the second movement, the Adagio, that the impossible occurred. Madame Vasquez was positioned at the very center of the stage, directly beneath the main spotlight. She had just begun the most beautiful passage, a haunting melody that seemed to float through the hall like a prayer." Holmes leaned forward. "Continue." "The stage is completely open, Mr. Holmes. No curtains, no sets, no possible concealment. Over 2,000 pairs of eyes were fixed upon her. The orchestra members, seated mere feet away, were watching her every movement. I myself was observing from the director's box with perfect visibility. And then?" Sir Reginald's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. Between one note and the next, she simply vanished. Not gradually, not with any theatrical effect or flash of light. She was there, and then she was not. Her violin continued to emit the most ethereal music for perhaps 3 more seconds, as if her spirit were completing the phrase, and then it too fell silent. The room fell into profound silence, broken only by the crackling of the fire. Holmes remained motionless, his keen eyes fixed upon our visitor's face. "The audience's reaction?" he inquired. "Pandemonium initially. People screamed, fainted, crossed themselves. Many thought it was some elaborate stage illusion, part of the performance. But as the seconds stretched into minutes with no reappearance, no explanation, the mood turned to genuine terror. The orchestra sat frozen, their instruments silent, staring at the empty space where she had stood." "What actions were taken immediately?" "I ordered the curtain lowered and the house lights raised. The police were summoned within minutes. Inspector Bradshaw, perhaps you know him, arrived with a full forensics team. Every inch of that stage was examined, Mr. Holmes. Every trapdoor, every piece of equipment, every possible means of concealment or escape." Holmes rose and began his familiar pacing. "The stage construction, describe it in detail." "Solid hardwood flooring, installed less than 2 years ago. No trapdoors in that particular section. The nearest stage machinery is at least 20 feet away. The backdrop was a simple cyclorama, a curved wall with no openings whatsoever." "Security cameras?" "Naturally, we have extensive surveillance throughout the building. Every camera angle confirms the same impossible truth. Madame Vasquez vanished from a space that offered no conceivable means of escape or concealment." "And her violin?" Sir Reginald's expression grew even more troubled. "This is perhaps the most unsettling aspect of the entire affair. Her violin, a priceless Guarneri del Gesù from 1743, was found the following morning in her locked dressing room, carefully placed in its case as if she had put it away herself. The dressing room showed no signs of disturbance, no indication of how the instrument arrived there." Holmes stopped pacing abruptly. "Her personal effects?" "All present and accounted for. Her street clothes hung neatly in the wardrobe, her jewelry in its case, her handbag containing money and passport untouched. It was as if she had simply stepped out for a moment, intending to return." I found myself drawn into the mystery despite my natural skepticism. "Sir Reginald, what of Madame Vasquez's personal life? Any enemies, financial difficulties, romantic entanglements?" "Dr. Watson, Elena Vasquez lived like a medieval saint. Her entire existence revolved around her music. She had no known romantic attachments, no financial concerns. Her performances commanded astronomical fees. As for enemies," he shrugged helplessly, "musicians can be jealous creatures, but hardly to the point of orchestrating supernatural kidnappings." Holmes resumed his seat, his expression thoughtful. "Tell me about the rehearsals. Were there any unusual incidents? Any changes to routine?" "The dress rehearsal proceeded normally, though I did notice that Madame Vasquez seemed somewhat distracted. She spoke privately with Maestro Zimmermann after the rehearsal, but he assured me it was merely a discussion of tempi for certain passages." "Is the maestro available for consultation?" Sir Reginald's face darkened. "That is another troubling aspect of this affair. Maestro Zimmermann departed London the very next morning, claiming a family emergency in Vienna. Most unusual, as he was contracted for the entire week. He left no forwarding address and has not responded to our communications." Holmes exchanged a meaningful glance with me. Indeed, most unusual timing. "Mr. Holmes," Sir Reginald continued, his voice taking on a desperate tone, "the implications of this event extend far beyond the loss of one performer, however talented. Word has spread throughout the musical community. Artists are cancelling engagements, refusing to perform on our stage. The press is calling it everything from supernatural intervention to elaborate insurance fraud. Our reputation, built over centuries, is crumbling." "What does Inspector Bradshaw make of the affair?" "The poor man is at his wit's end. He has interviewed every member of the orchestra, every stagehand, every usher. He has examined hours of security footage, tested every square inch of that stage for hidden mechanisms. His official report lists the case as unexplained disappearance under extraordinary circumstances." Holmes stood and moved to the mantelpiece, retrieving his pipe. "Sir Reginald, I shall require complete access to the Opera House, including all backstage areas, technical facilities, and personnel records. I will also need to interview Madame Vasquez's dresser, her accompanist, and anyone else who interacted with her on the day of the performance. Anything, Mr. Holmes, anything at all. One final question for now. Has there been any communication from Madame Vasquez since her disappearance? Any ransom demands? Any message of any kind? Sir Reginald shook his head slowly. Nothing. It is as if she has vanished from the very face of the earth. After Sir Reginald departed, promising to arrange our access to the opera house for the following morning, Holmes remained standing by the fire, lost in thought. I attempted to engage him in discussion of the case, but received only monosyllabic responses. Finally, as the clock struck 11, he spoke. "Watson, what strikes you as the most significant aspect of this disappearance?" I considered carefully. "The sheer impossibility of it, I suppose. A woman cannot simply vanish from the center of a stage before 2,000 witnesses." "Precisely, and therein lies our first clue." "I'm afraid I don't follow." Holmes turned to face me, his eyes gleaming with the fire of intellectual pursuit. "My dear Watson, when dealing with an impossibility, one must first question the fundamental assumptions. We are told that Madame Vasquez vanished from the center of the stage before 2,000 witnesses. But what if she never vanished at all?" "Holmes, surely you're not suggesting that 2,000 people simultaneously hallucinated?" "Not hallucinated, Watson. Misdirected." Before I could pursue this intriguing comment further, Holmes had retired to his room, leaving me to ponder the extraordinary events at the Royal Opera House. Sleep, when it finally came, brought with it dreams of haunting violin melodies and empty stages bathed in spectral light. The next morning dawned grey and forbidding, matching my mood as we made our way through the bustling streets toward Covent Garden. Holmes had been unusually quiet during breakfast, consuming only coffee while making cryptic notes in his ever-present notebook. "Have you formed any preliminary theories?" I ventured as our cab navigated the morning traffic. "Several, Watson, though none yet satisfy all the observed facts. Tell me, what do you know of stage magic and theatrical illusion?" "Very little, I'm afraid. Parlor tricks and music hall entertainments have never held much appeal for me." "A pity. The greatest illusions are built upon the simplest principles: misdirection, timing, and the manipulation of human perception. A skilled magician can make an elephant vanish in full view of thousands, not through supernatural means, but through the clever exploitation of psychological blind spots." "You believe this to be an elaborate stage trick?" "I believe, Watson, that when confronted with the impossible, we must look for the improbable, and in my experience, the improbable usually proves to be quite mundane once properly understood." The Royal Opera House loomed before us, its neoclassical facade as imposing as ever, despite the scandal that now surrounded it. Sir Reginald met us at the stage door, looking haggard and worn. "Gentlemen, welcome. I trust you slept better than I did." "Have there been any new developments?" Holmes inquired as we were led through the maze of corridors behind the Grand Theatre. "Only more cancellations and increasingly wild speculation in the press. The Times is running a series on paranormal London, while the sensationalist papers are calling it everything from demonic possession to alien abduction." We emerged onto the vast stage where the impossible had occurred 3 nights previously. In the harsh light of day, without the magic of performance lighting and the anticipation of an audience, it appeared utterly mundane, a large, empty space bounded by curtains and technical equipment. Holmes immediately began his examination, producing a powerful magnifying glass from his coat pocket. He spent considerable time studying the exact spot where Madame Vasquez had been standing, then expanded his search in widening circles. "The flooring shows no signs of disturbance," he murmured, more to himself than to us. "No hidden mechanisms, no recently installed fixtures." He moved to examine the overhead rigging, the side curtains, the orchestra pit. Every detail was subjected to his intense scrutiny. I watched him work with the familiar admiration I had felt so many times over the decades. The way he seemed to read stories in the smallest traces of evidence that others would overlook entirely. "Sir Reginald," Holmes called from his position near the footlights, "I require a complete list of everyone who had access to this theatre in the 48 hours preceding the performance." That would be quite extensive, Mr. Holmes. Orchestra members, stage crew, administrative staff, catering personnel, cleaning crews. Everyone, Holmes interrupted. No exceptions. As Sir Reginald hurried away to compile the requested information, Holmes turned his attention to the lighting booth high above the auditorium. Watson, we must examine every vantage point from which the stage was visible during the performance. If Madame Vasquez vanished through trickery rather than supernatural intervention, someone had to coordinate that trickery. We spent the next 2 hours exploring every corner of the historic building. Holmes examined the lighting booth, the royal box, the director's office, anywhere that offered a clear view of the stage. His method was systematic and thorough, though I confess I could not discern what specific evidence he was seeking. It was while we were examining Madame Vasquez's dressing room that Holmes made his first significant discovery. "Watson," he called, his voice sharp with excitement. "Observe this." I joined him at the dressing room's makeup table where he was studying the mirror with his magnifying glass. "What am I looking for?" "Here, along the edge of the mirror. Do you see these tiny scratches in the silvering?" I leaned closer. "Yes, barely visible. They appear fresh." "Precisely. Someone has very recently and very carefully removed this mirror from its mounting and then replaced it. The question is, why?" Holmes spent several more minutes examining the mirror and its surroundings before moving to the wardrobe where Madame Vasquez's street clothes still hung. "Her costume for the performance, where is it now?" Sir Reginald, who had returned with the personnel list, looked puzzled. "Why, I assume it's still here. Let me check with wardrobe." But a quick inventory revealed that the crimson evening gown Madame Vasquez had worn during her vanishing act was nowhere to be found in the theater. "Most curious," Holmes mused. "The woman vanishes, but her violin returns to its case and her performance costume disappears entirely. Watson, what does this suggest to you?" Before I could respond, we were interrupted by the arrival of Inspector Bradshaw, a competent officer whom Holmes had assisted on several previous occasions. "Mr. Holmes, Dr. Watson," he greeted us with obvious relief. "Thank heaven you've taken an interest in this case. I've been investigating for 3 days, and I'm no closer to understanding what happened than when I started." "Inspector," Holmes replied, "show me your crime scene photographs and witness statements. Every detail may prove significant." As we examined Bradshaw's meticulously compiled evidence, a picture began to emerge of the events leading up to the impossible disappearance. Madame Vasquez had arrived at the theater at 5 o'clock, her usual preparation time. She had seemed nervous, according to her dresser, but not unusually so. The dress rehearsal had proceeded without incident, though several orchestra members noted that she appeared distracted during the final run-through. "What of this private conversation with Maestro Zimmermann?" Holmes inquired. According to the concertmaster, they spoke in German, which none of the other musicians understood. The conversation appeared heated, with gesticulation on both sides. Holmes studied the photographs of the stage taken immediately after the disappearance. "Inspector, in your experience, what was the precise reaction time between the vanishing and the lowering of the curtain?" Sir Reginald estimates approximately 30 seconds. The audience was too shocked to react immediately, and it took time for the stage manager to realize that something had genuinely gone wrong rather than being part of the performance. 30 seconds, Holmes repeated thoughtfully. Ample time for many things, yet insufficient for others. We concluded our initial examination as evening approached. Holmes had filled several pages with notes and sketches, but remained maddeningly uncommunicative about his theories. "Tomorrow," he announced as we departed, "we must interview the orchestra members individually. Tonight, Watson, I require your medical expertise for a rather unusual consultation." "Of what nature?" "I need to understand precisely what happens to the human body during extreme psychological shock. Can a person simply cease to exist through the sheer force of mental trauma?" I stared at him. "Holmes, surely you're not seriously considering a psychosomatic explanation for physical disappearance?" "I am considering everything, Watson. In a case where the impossible has apparently occurred, We must examine even the most unlikely possibilities. As we walked through the gaslit streets toward Baker Street, I found myself more puzzled than ever by the mystery of the vanishing violinist. Yet I had learned long ago to trust in Holmes's methods, however obscure they might initially appear. Somewhere in the maze of facts and observations we had gathered, the truth lay waiting to be discovered. The game, as Holmes would say, was afoot. The mystery of the vanishing violinist has only begun to unfold, and Holmes's investigation will lead us down paths of deception and conspiracy that we could never have imagined. Stay tuned for part 2, where we delve deeper into the web of secrets surrounding Madame Vasquez's impossible disappearance. Don't forget to like this story and subscribe for more thrilling adventures with the world's greatest detective, and ring that bell icon so you won't miss the next chapter of this extraordinary case.